The Able to Care podcast is sponsored by Able Training Support Limited, who build partnerships with organisations to develop confidence and competence in their team to promote positive outcomes for all. Find the link in the description. Hello, and welcome to an episode of the Able to Care podcast with me, Andy Baker. So I thought I would do this short episode on something I've been doing some prep work. So I've been delivering training for over 15 or so years, something like that. And I teach over 150 different courses in different areas and different kind of sectors and different different kind of specialities. Obviously, my main is behavior management, but I do all sorts. And we've slowly been building the business up, and I've been doing continued professional development over the years. And sometimes there's courses that I don't deliver very often, and then I come back to. And just recently, I got asked to cover a course for one of my colleagues on end-of-life care. And it's been a long time since I did any training or delivery in end-of-life care. I wrote a course on it probably 7 or 8 years ago. And delivered it on numerous occasions within certain sectors that I was working with and working in. And then I haven't really, it's probably been, I would say, 3-4 years since I've delivered any training in end of life, because I brought in other trainers that have been doing that for me. So, and I nearly turned it down because sometimes it's hard work relearning stuff. But I thought, you know what, I haven't done any CPD in it for a while. I haven't done any kind of work in it for a while. It'd be nice to kind of change things up. I do so much on behavior that maybe it's nice to kind of change subjects up a little bit and keep me on my toes and keep my information fresh. So when I was doing my updated research on this, there was a few things that I remembered or thought about that I thought actually could be good topics for the Able to Care podcast. Because I think end of life and palliative care in many different areas and many different elements of care, that is something that's a very real aspect of care that many paid and unpaid carers have to deal with or have to manage. I think is one of the inevitable parts of life. Well, the one thing we all absolutely know for certain is that we are all going to die. It's the only thing we know for certain. So I'm afraid it's going to be one of those, I don't know whether a bit of a downer of a podcast, but hopefully we'll kind of keep it upbeat, or at least hopefully I'll try and keep it informative enough to not become too emotionally heavy. Because that's one of the problems, isn't it? That even though it is inevitable, the subject of end of life and death is something that is so emotionally connected and so hard. And particularly in our culture, I think we really do find it a difficult subject to talk about and to contemplate, which I think creates all sorts of problems. This is my personal feelings. I am not in the slightest bit scared of death. I'm maybe scared of dying in the fact that I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be discomfort, but death isn't something that scares me. So I'm kind of feel comfortable talking about it. I also don't think talking about it will increase the likelihood of it happening, which I think some people maybe feel does. And people just want to deny it because it's something that scares them. It's like they're scared of spiders, so they don't want to talk about spiders. They're scared of death, so they don't want to talk about death. I have an advanced care plan already written for myself. And for those of you who don't know what an advanced care plan is, basically it's if something happened to me tomorrow, how would I want to be cared for? What are the most important things that matter to me? What would I want somebody who is caring for me to know? What would I want my death to be like? What would I want my funeral to be like? These are all things that I've kind of mapped out, and that may make me sound odd, but I think that's perfectly normal. If I plan a holiday when I go on holiday to make sure I get the best out of it and I enjoy it, and I've got some excursions planned, and I make sure I choose a good hotel and things like that. But something might happen, meaning I don't go on holiday. But the one thing I absolutely know for certain is that I'm going to die. So why wouldn't I put a plan in place to make sure the people that I know or don't know potentially are able to look after me in the right way? Because there's always that reliance, well, my partner knows, my parents know, but do they know everything? And what if worst case, something was to happen to them where they weren't able to be involved? So A few things I think are useful to think about related to terms, maybe is worthwhile thinking about. So there's two terms that people refer to, what's called palliative care and end-of-life care. And end-of-life care is part of palliative care. So palliative care is basically once you receive a diagnosis of a terminal illness, you will fall under the palliative care kind of umbrella. Once you have an illness that we know is going to lead to terminal, even if it's still being treated, you maybe fall into the palliative care. So palliative care is going to try and make that journey in the care that you receive as you're moving towards your end of life, the right for you, comfortable, relief of pain, things like that, okay? And the right treatments that suit you. The end of life care part of it usually tends to fall into the last, few months, weeks, or days of a person's life, depending on how the illness progresses. So the palliative care is your kind of overall care package, the holistic approach, and the end of life is those last bit as far as how the pain is going to be managed, where you want to be, who you want around you, and things like that. There's an exercise when I'm teaching end of life care that I get people to do, which is I start off by just getting them to think about what makes a good life. And if you think about what makes a good life for you, it's being around the people that you like, it's doing the things you like to do, it's having the conversations you like, it's being pain-free and as healthy as possible, and eating good food and enjoying your food, and whatever it is, there's comfort, there's attachments, there's some level of occupation. There's so many things that give a good quality of life. And I think many of the things that we think of that offer a good quality of life are also what would offer us a good death. Having the people we love around us, being pain-free, being able to, if we can, have the conversations or have things we enjoy around us, be able to reminisce on the memories that make us happy, or to still experience the things that make us happy. I don't think there's any difference. And therefore, the more things that I can plan for how I want to be cared for, how I want to be looked after. So, I've laid out what my preferred morning routine is, for instance, because I love a coffee in bed. I don't particularly like breakfast in bed. I'll have it, but I don't consider that a treat. I love a cooked breakfast, but I'd rather get up and eat it than have it in bed. That may seem like a tiny little thing, but when I'm not able to make that choice for myself and other people might be making that choice for me or deciding what's going on in a day-to-day, then maybe I'd like them to know the thing that makes me most happy, the thing that I prefer. So I've kind of mapped that out for myself. The advanced care plan kind of lays out how I want to be looked after, but it's also like, I even written down the songs that I want at my funeral. I remember attending a funeral. It was a favorite funeral I've ever been to, which may sound weird as far as having a favorite funeral, but it's from a guy who used to run a fast food restaurant very close to where I lived. And I was a regular in there with a few of my friends. We all used to go in there. So we all attended his funeral. There's a guy called Tony. He was a lovely guy. And I remember it was one of the most amazing funerals. It was just at the crematorium. And the song Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen came on as one of the songs. So it weren't hymns. There was Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And I don't know whether those of you listening, if you remember the film Wayne's World, when they're listening to Bohemian Rhapsody, and when it kicks into that last little bit, then everybody kind of headbangs in the car. And it was so amazing to see a room full of people who were all wearing black and mourning, but all like not either struggling not to or actually going with it, and ended up nodding their head at that bit in Bohemian Rhapsody. That was just something beautiful, something wonderful to behold. And that immediately made me know that's how I'd like to be remembered. He also had the Simpsons theme tune playing as the curtains closed, as he went to be cremated. And that was an amazing soundtrack as well, that just changed it from something sad to something slightly lighthearted, something tongue-in-cheek. And I know that wouldn't be for everybody. That, some people want, the morbid, they want the sad, and that's absolutely fine. But that made me think about when I go, I want to have some control about how I go and the music that's playing when I go, because I would love something similar. You can plan all of that as far as your advanced care plan is concerned. There's also some other things. So I have done some other podcasts on things like Mental Capacity Act. And when it comes to the Mental Capacity Act, it's obviously if I become poorly and I'm not able to make decisions, somebody might need to make decisions on my behalf. So there is some other bits that people don't always understand. So there is a thing called lasting power of attorney, and lasting power of attorney has two aspects to it. One is financial and one is care. And basically, this is where we are presenting somebody else with permission to make decisions on our behalf if we're not able to make those decisions for ourselves. Because obviously with an advanced care plan, I can put in certain decisions to not have certain medical treatments. I can't remember the proper term for it, but I can make decisions kind of go, I don't want these particular treatment types or things like that. So I can make some advanced decisions on that. But I'm not going to know everything that might happen. And therefore, there may be other family members or other loved ones that might be making those decisions on my behalf. I think there's a common misunderstanding that because we have this thing of next of kin, whether it be our married partner or our children or our parents, that then they'll be the ones making those decisions. But actually, next of kin does not give them any legal powers to make decisions on my behalf, even if we're married. So it is really important, and I recommend it, make sure before a person does lack the capacity to make those decisions themselves or doesn't have the capacity to make those decisions themselves, that we have that lasting power of attorney in place. So they're giving you that power that when I can't make decisions, please, you provide those decisions for me. You do that for me. You're somebody I trust and you know me better than anybody else. And you need to make sure you're applying for both the financial and the care of lasting power of attorney to make sure both are covered as well. So please make sure that you put those in place before you need them, not after you need them. You obviously, next of kin can gain choice and power or control over the care and financials, but it has to go through a court system and it can take some time. It can be a little bit more complex. So it's far easier if it's made an advanced decision is made. When you are caring for somebody who maybe is got a terminal illness, or maybe you're not there yet, but you are caring for somebody, it's important to have these conversations early, but we do have to be empathic and we do have to be considerate when we're going into these conversations. For those who are professional carers, it is worthwhile kind of creating a bit of a plan of going, okay, when are we going to sit down with this person and discuss what their wants and desires are as they move through their journey with whatever it is. And whether this is, a learning disability home, going, these are still things that, this individual will have choices, they will have preferences, even if they have learning disabilities. There's no point in kind of waiting until it's too late for them to have decisions over what they would like in their life. The same as dementia, it's better at the earlier stages of the illness rather than later on, where again, we can do some life history work with them and find out what their preferences and likes are and create that advanced care plan with them as soon as possible. And also start including family in the process and making sure their family are aware of that. I always say it's something that's important for me is some of my friends know me in a different way and maybe better in some ways than my family, my sister and my parents do. So if something was to happen to me, I would hope that my friends would be considered or talked to about what I might like, enjoy, preferences I might have, what would make me happy, who I'd want around me. Because they know a different part of me to what my parents do. The course that I'm going to be presenting next week as far as end of life is concerned, there's quite a few areas that we kind of talk about in there as individual preferences related to end of life, making sure we've got a holistic approach as well. So, it's not just about the music of the funeral, it's also spiritual beliefs, for instance. So knowing a little bit about or having some awareness of a person's spiritual beliefs, I think is massively important to, again, provide that good death or that end of life appropriate. So those who are paid carers, this is where we need to have some understanding. If we are supporting somebody of Buddhist faith or Sikh faith or, Islamic, then what do we need to know about their end of life process? Is there any specific things that need to happen at the moment of their death, as far as, the way we lay out the room, the things that we do, who comes to see them, what we should be saying, anything like that that might be important to them, to ensure that good death occurs. And that's so important to have that conversation early, or do some research on it and ask those questions. Um, I I am non-religious, and I wouldn't want anything religious at any of my service or anything like that. But I've got close friends who are very religious, and therefore it wouldn't be based on my preferences. It would be based on theirs. So my sister is religious, for instance. So it would be, again, based on her preferences, not on mine. I always think it interesting, though, in some ways, that the funeral in some ways is for those who are still alive rather than the person who has passed. But it's that last, for me, I kind of think it's that last chance to actually have some control over something before I'll never get control over anything ever again. So, being able to make the decision of what music I'd like and where I'd like it to be, and whether I'd like to be cremated or buried, or even be used for science, is the last bit of control I will have in my life. So please let me have it. But yeah. Okay, so I know that was a bit of a morbid subject. Hopefully there were some little bits in there that more about terminology than anything else. But I think it is one of those, it's important to have the conversations early. Be brave and courageous enough to have those conversations. I think it's easy to distract and divert and avoid them, procrastinate. But I think there's a real benefit to talking. And it is so often as well, we learn so much about people at their funeral sometimes. I know I've been to funerals and learned so much about people by listening to the eulogy, listening to their history, listening to their story. And I felt a few times, isn't that a shame that I didn't know all that stuff when they were still alive? Because that would have been an amazing conversation to have, to go deeper into, hey, what happened there? So I always think it's good to have these conversations early and to find out these things early. What would you want said? And it's a great opportunity for a conversation about a person's past. If you found this useful, interesting, please like, share, and comment, and I'll see you next time.